Now, I think we're live. Now. I think we're live just about now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Libertarian Infighting. Today, we're going to talk about the good word of libertarian Satanism. Is Satanism going to take over the libertarian movement, or is libertarianism going to take over the Satanist movement? Today, we've got a libertarian and Satanist, JimJesus. Say hi, Jim.
Hi. Hail Satan.
Yeah. Okay, so let me make sure that we've got everything working before we start. Yeah, it all seems to be good. Tell me in the chat if anything's terrible, like if sound's fucked up. But I'm just basically going to get underway. So this is probably the one that I have the least knowledge of the three that I've done so far, including this one. I have never heard of, I'd never really heard of Satanism, Anton LaVey's kind of Satanism before, and that is apparently what we're going to be talking about today. So I guess I want to start off just in the shallow end of the pool. Jim, why do you worship Satan?
Okay. So first, let me say that I am not affiliated or a member or representing the Church of Satan.
Yes.
Especially doubly so with the Satanic Temple. I don't believe that they're Satanists at all. They're. I love a good troll, and they are good trolls, but their use of that, trying to actually paint it as real Satanism, is false. So I got interested in Satanism mostly because I was kind of interested in Max Stirner and egoism and that sort of thing. And I was kind of browsing around different things like Ayn Rand and stuff like that. And someone told me like, oh yeah, Satanic Bible is just basically a different way of putting the ego in its own. And I was like, oh, I'll check this out. So I ended up buying a copy for myself for Capitalismus. And so I read it and I was like, no, this is better because I think there's a few things in this thing that differentiate it from egoism, and it solves a lot of the problems that I had with just pure kind of like Stirner egoism type stuff.
Okay.
And most of it had to do with kind of like the rituals, rites, and traditions that come with Satanism, and a lot of the self-help stuff. And sorry, my cat's looking for attention.
That's okay. The cat's pretty much the star of your YouTube channel, as far as I've seen so far.
Yeah, pretty much. She's the mascot. So
yeah.
And so there was things in it that I was like, okay, this kind of fills a lot of the void that was left there by egoism. Mostly kind of like, we have to get rid of all the spooks. We can't have spooks or anything like that. And I thought that, I was like, well, yeah, you shouldn't have things above your own, but that doesn't mean that, you can't have, symbols, rites, traditions, and stuff like that that you can identify with. And it kind of fills a kind of void that egoism leaves you. And so that's what kind of interests me about Satanism, and kind of got more interested. And the more I read about it, the more I liked it. So
okay. So
and besides, having that in your room is pretty fucking awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
Look, I'm totally willing to admit it that all the symbolism is badass. We'll get to whether it's not just kind of cringy when you take it too seriously, and exactly how seriously you take it. But first, I kind of want to try to connect these two things, because at the moment we know you're a libertarian and we know you're a Satanist and kind of what that means, but why are these two things connected?
So Anton LaVey, he first codified Satanism. Satanism has never been a religion before that, and he codified it based it off, the works of two authors, or three. There's also Epicurus, and that was Ayn Rand and Ragnar Redbeard, which I actually have a copy of. Mine is right here, which I was reading through the other day. And he kind of took out a lot of the more unsavory aspects of both of those things and kind of codified it into religion. So there's elements of libertarianism, as well as kind of like the occult and symbolism and rituals and rites and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff from egoism as well.
Okay, well, so can you give us an example? You said that in the symbolism, etc., there's a lot of stuff that is related to libertarianism. Like what?
Yeah. So Satanism has like a kind of rules and like kind of like a code of conduct, kind of like its own ethical system, but it doesn't kind of say it's for everybody. It's basically like, hey, if you want to get on best, here's a set of rules that you should follow, and here's the kind of guide, the way you should kind of live your life. And a lot of those rules are very steeped in individualism, pulling yourself up, and social Darwinism and that sort of thing. Okay. Explicit social Darwinism, which is kind of a step away from a libertarianism, but it's, I guess, more pure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so there's a couple of things on that list. You said the rules, right? Because I did do a little bit of reading for this. Like I said, not super familiar with it, but one of the things I found was the 11 satanic rules of the earth. And rule 1 off the bat starts to seem pretty counter to libertarians. Rule 1, according to this list I've got from the Church of Satan website, is do not give opinions or advice unless you're asked. Basically, you can't be opinionated. Sounds like you can't be a libertarian to me. Doesn't that kind of contradict something?
So what Anton is talking about there is it's the kind of people who are like, just say like, oh, today sucks or whatever. And people start issuing you unwarranted advice and opinions and stuff related to that. And you're just kind of like one of those type of things. And he says that's unwarranted. Don't do it. However, he's not making a universal claim or universal ethic out of it. He's just saying, if you want to get on best, if you want to have the best time in your life, if you want to achieve the most in your life, here's the kind of rules that you should follow. But you don't have to follow them. And he even talks about how Satanism isn't for everybody. And in fact, one of the kind of the points of the church is, and of Satanism in general, is chances are, not only is it not for you, we don't want you anyway.
Okay.
So Satanism has to appeal to you to begin with. And then once you appeal to that and you agree with the rules, then you can adopt them in your own life.
But okay, I want to press this a little bit. It was a bit of a mean question to begin with, but there is a nugget of seriousness to that, right? The way they say, do not give opinions or advice unless you're asked. That's what your YouTube channel is, isn't it? Like, it's giving your opinion.
But the people who come to my channel are asking for it by seeing the title and the image and saying, hey, I want to know what this asshole's opinion of it is.
Okay.
I'm not forcing it down their opinions. I don't do a lot of social media marketing, even though I know quite a bit about it. Hey, Meffy. She's trying to steal the show. So you can't have it. You're not 21 yet.
This is the cat show now.
Yeah, this cat show. I'll just bring her on, have her talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I don't really kind of force my opinions on people. But if people ask me questions all the time, and I'm willing to answer those questions. If people want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, they're free to do though. I don't shove them. If it seems like someone is not interested in what I have to say or something, I just usually leave them alone.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So rule 1, I can kind of see, it is compatible. The problem with that is maybe a little bit of a meme. And rules 3 and 4, I was pleasantly surprised by. It seems kind of like some private property stuff. That is, when in another's lair, fucking lair, seriously? Okay, anyway, when in another's lair, show him respect or else do not go there. Which, sounds like some private property stuff going on there. And number 4, if a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy. So it's, what are those laws where someone comes onto your property and you can shoot them? Trespassing.
Basically what he's saying here is if someone comes onto your property and starts advocating communism and democracy, you can physically remove them, so to speak. Yeah,
of course. All right. And there, if you go through them, there's a bunch that, seem pretty reasonable, like 9, do not harm little children, things like that. But number 7 is one that really stuck out to me. And granted, it's not really a libertarian complaint with this, but it's just a general complaint. Number 7 talks about fucking magic, Jim.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. Yeah. So, Jim, my question is, isn't that fucking stupid?
It was. So, on its face, if you're talking about, do you believe David Blaine really can tell you, like, knows what card that you picked out of his deck before you even opened it and flipped it over without you knowing? Like, no, of course, that's all horseshit. What Anton is talking about is he's talking about a magic in the sense of kind of the occultic magics, right? So you have greater and lesser magics. Greater magic is kind of like ceremonial magic, where you do things like black mass or rituals and that sort of thing to kind of put yourself in a positive mindset in order to achieve goals. So black mass is mostly kind of like a parody of Catholic mass. That's where it kind of originated. And Catholic Mass actually is almost like a parody of a lot of the old pagan traditions and rites that were adopted in order to kind of as good missionary work for the church. And so the point of it is kind of mostly kind of what would back in the day would have been called a cult, but now we kind of realize it's kind of just, positive psychology or reverse psychology. It's basically you're trying to cement in your mind that you have the ability to do something. And not question it and just say, like, I'm just be affirmed, like, I can do this.
Why?
I can do this. just the power of power of positive thinking, right?
Okay.
Like there's good studies to show that like if people are like have a positive outlook before trying to achieve a goal, they're going to be more
Right.
successful than if they
So you're
don't.
not talking about you should believe you can do things you can't do. It's just you should use affirmations to tell yourself you can do something that you think you might be able to do.
Right.
Okay.
Even if those are far-fetched, even if you may not be successful, but it's always if you're trying to do something like that, you're supposed to remove all doubt from it. The lesser magic is kind of like everyday practical kind of things, like the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you interact with people, just basic manipulation of situations in order to achieve your goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So once we have that kind of definition of magic, I'm going to bring up now a contradiction that I think I see in Satanism.
Okay.
So in other parts of Satanism, I think they often talk about avoiding self-deception. Would you agree with that?
Okay, I'm with you so far.
All right.
Let's
so
see
I
know where this is going, but I want to hear your argument.
Okay. So basically, if you're trying to avoid self-deception, shouldn't you be hard-nosed realist about what you're capable of doing, rather than even perhaps for some pragmatic purpose, telling yourself you can do things you can't?
Well, I think you should set yourself realistic goals. Like you probably shouldn't try to do a black mass and try to say, "Hey, I'm gonna try to achieve kind of assistless flight. I'm just gonna learn how to fly like Superman." That's not going to be successful. But like hey, I really want to bang this cute girl at church or whatever, like something like that. Then
do you go to church?
No. There's no actual church.
Okay.
Yeah, the only church that at least the Church of Satan has had is now gone.
Right.
That was the Black House. There are satanic temple churches, quote unquote, but again, they're basically just progressive SJWs that are just kind of using the symbols to troll people. Which
So
I can appreciate a good troll, but no.
If there's no actual building, then what's the structure of Satanism in that case? Like the Church of Satan appears to be, on its website it says was founded by Anton LaVey, the dude who founded this shit. Is there some kind of hierarchy or structure to this? Like, is there some kind of organization that you're like the Catholic Church is a very specific thing, or is it really a bit more vague, like, I don't know, Unitarian or something?
I don't know much about the Unitarians other than that they're weird. And I can't really speak too much about the Church of Satan, considering that I'm not a member or anything. However, I do know members of the Church of Satan. And the way it kind of seems structured to me, as I understand it, and again, I'm not a representative, is that there's Peter Gilmore, who is the head of the church after Anton LaVey handed over the reins to him. And then there's, minister or pastors or wherever. Yeah, and then those people can be the official spokespeople of the church, and they can conduct weddings and ceremonies and stuff like that, or official ceremonies. Anybody can do a black mass, but
I think I get the idea of the
weddings.
Structure.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some kind of official hierarchy and structure to the church, but like, for example, you call yourself a Satanist, but you're affiliated with it in no way at all.
I'm an independent Satanist. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And so are they against you in that case? Do they think, oh, he's not part of the church, he's an apostate, or he's a heretic or something?
Well, considering that that one of the ministers was like a Patreon of mine for quite some time, I'd imagine no.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're well connected there.
Not, yeah.
Okay, so you're not a representative, but you are perhaps a decent example. Like some people from the Church of Satan, at least one guy thinks that you're pretty swell.
Yeah, he thinks I'm pretty swell. I mean, that's the best I can say. I don't think he would do it like, yeah, he's a good representative of the church. There's a few things with the church that I disagree with enough for me not to decide to be a member. One of which is their hard-nosed stance on intellectual property, and their constant railing for legalized abortion, which I'm definitely pro-life. So
okay, cool.
Or leaning pro-life rather.
I think that probably segues pretty well into I think one of the main problems that there might be with Satanism. Actually, no, first let's get to this next step, because I think it's important. So you have these rituals that you go through. Like, can you give an example of a ritual that you've performed somewhat recently?
Well, this is YouTube, so I don't think we can talk about a lot of explicit content.
Jesus.
But there are things, but I can say that there are things like sex magic, and my lady friend has been over here for the last month. So, yeah, I don't want to go into detail on that, but you can
Okay,
imagine.
I can let people have their. Okay, so
Basically, I'm just trying to trying to like use the energy that's happening in that particular situation to kind of channel into what I want to achieve.
what
So
have
like
you
I want
like?
to get a better job. I can be like, I'm using this energy and really just putting my mind to all of that at the time.
Okay, but
At
why
that
does
time,
that? Why does that need to be associated with something like Satanism, like
oh no,
associated with
it's
the dude with the horns and having this sort of spiritual, these kind of false seeming beliefs about like magic and energy, which I know you're using as just symbols, but why does it have to have all that baggage attached to it? Why can't you say just, I know I can do it? Why can't this be that, what's his name, Robbins guy, the positive affirmation guy?
Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins, yeah, why can't it just be that?
Well, I don't have the teeth. Well, first of all, I don't have the teeth. Secondly, I think more importantly is that that humans have tradition, like they identify with things like symbols, traditions, and rites, right? If you think about like a lot of times when you hear atheists who were formerly Christians and then like make the conversion back, one of the things they always talk about is like, I like the sense that there's a sense of community and, like there's all sorts of different things that are, and I like to participate in this kind of social functions and all this other stuff. What they're basically saying is that once they became an atheist, there was something missing. Like there was a sense of community missing. There was a sense of like traditions and the symbols that come along with it, like the crucifix and all that other stuff. And there was something like missing from them. And they ended up having to go back or join some other religion or join something like, I don't know, what is it, secular humanism or some other religion like that. Or
And
they get caught up in a political dogma like Marxism or something like that. So there's a lot of those things, and people look for those sorts of things.
okay.
And Anton brought those things in and said, look, you can either have these religions that proclaim to be like given down from high above and are set, like they're not up for debate or scrutiny. They're just blind devotion. Or you can, take these things that I just made up and grab from other things and enjoy them and study and be better yourself. And I'm like, that's a much better way because I like to identify with the symbols.
Okay. Now that we've got that, you've got your symbols, we know why you're using them, you've got all of these magic seeming things, well, using the word magic to describe a lot of things that maybe aren't
I do
really,
know some
but...
card magic, by the way.
Oh, okay. Does that count as a ritual or just...
No,
Okay.
that's just fun.
So now we've got that on the table. My main question of the entire interview is going to be, why aren't you just what's called a cultural Christian then? There are... You could go, instead of going against Christianity, going to the opposite, you could go along with a whole lot of the people in the libertarian movement already. There's like a lot of Christians. I mean, I'm not, but you've got your whole Bob Murphy and Tom Woods and that whole crowd amongst the Mises people. There's an enormous amount of Christians. There's a lot of free market support from Christians in America. Right? It seems like if you're going to be a libertarian and you want some kind of sort of religious thinking in your life, some kind of religious part of your life, but you don't believe in like the magic of it, then why not simply be a cultural Christian like some people are? Wouldn't that work better with the people you're surrounded by?
Well,
I mean,
try to appeal to.
It would appeal to people better, but additionally, Satanism appears to be a direct fuck you to Christianity, right? That is at least how it comes off.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Is it? Some aspects, yeah.
Because it's taking their bad guy and saying, no, actually, I love that guy. Hail Satan! And like that's kind of a big fuck you to Christians. Isn't this gonna... If the libertarian movement were to become more Satanist, would that not alienate Christians? If you want to fit in the libertarian movement, wouldn't you be better off being a cultural Christian?
Well, considering that the LP has recently, as of like a couple of years ago, started posting Anton LaVey quotes on their Twitter, I don't think they see that as a problem either. So it's not like I'm alone here. Not saying that I endorse the LP or
the LP
like
though. I mean, libertarians, the LP, they're not that related.
Yeah, but I mean, at least I'm not alone here completely.
True.
Not to say that, I do have a lot of Christian friends. I have a lot of people who are Christians who follow my YouTube channel. She's just really begging for my attention.
Right.
I have a lot of people who are like devoutly Christian who still, in fact, one of the people's who follows me is Jesus Freak is in the name. So it's not that I don't really put a lot of effort and time like going after religion, and I think a lot of that stuff kind of comes off as kind of fedora tipping at this point.
Yeah.
But it's not just because I think it's fedora tipping doesn't mean that I think it's wrong. I just think that it's kind of cringy, and I don't really talk about it a lot, and I don't think that's the most important part of it. The important part of it is the kind of attitude against a lot of the beliefs that they have,
Okay.
like the golden rule and things like that.
So you think the golden rule is something you have a real problem with?
Yeah, I think some silver rule is a lot better of a rule. So
Okay,
the golden rule is like do unto others as you want them to do unto you, correct?
Yes.
However, if someone breaks into my house, or if I broke into someone's house, I'd want them to roll out the red carpet, show me where the silverware is, and show me where their wallets are, and give me the Social Security.
And so instead,
I don't want to do that with. Yeah, so I don't want that to happen to me if they're breaking or into my house. I don't want to do that for them. Rather, I want to do unto others as they do unto me. I think that's a much better rule. So if they want to violate my property, I'm going to violate theirs. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you're actually opposed. So Satanism is necessarily in opposition to Christianity. Like that's actually a core part of it. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is Satanism like necessarily opposed to Christianity then?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not opposed to Christians. Like we're fine with them. Just
so you might say that you hate the sin but love the sinner.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But we do think that stupidity is the highest sin.
I also
I'm sure you've read.
I also want to show a couple of interesting points that some people in the comments are maybe more making to me. Spitfire culturally believe in the resurrection of the Son of God. Let's culturally worship Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. He was pierced for my inequities, but only culturally. So yeah, maybe that whole cultural Christian thing is a bit cringe too. But my point was more, it might be less abrasive for others amongst libertarians. But we've got an answer to that.
But look, if I'm trying to appease everybody, I'm doing a terrible job even before I became a Satanist. I'm very well known for being an asshole, so much so that I put it in my bio, and then Christopher Cantwell kind of took over that and made it cringy. But I was here first. Fuck you.
Okay, fair enough. Well, all right. Well, the next thing is just keeping on with that Christianity thing. Since there are so much support for libertarianism from Christianity. I mean, it's not the largest source of support, but in general, I think that there's a lot of Marxist atheists out there, and Satanism, as I understand, is an atheistic religion, and there's a lot of somewhat free market Christians out there. At least the majority of support for free markets in the US does seem to come from Christians, as meager as it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how do you, as someone who is proposing this kind of religion that's directly opposed to Christianity and libertarianism, how do you kind of square that? Like, doesn't that mean that there's something about Christianity that makes people libertarian and we should embrace it?
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I know a lot. I think most of the ANCAPs, small government people, yeah, I've run into a lot of devout Christian small government people. When it comes to ANCAPs, it seems a lot of them come from, the kind of fedora tipping atheist crowd, and they were just looking for something else to get a hold of, and they just found this, and good for them. I'm like not complaining, but it seems as though like most of the ANCAPs that I've run into are at least not Christian. I've run into a couple pagans, a couple Satanists too, but most of them have been kind of strong atheist. There are some. I don't know if it's a majority. I haven't seen a poll or anything like that to say whether or not. If someone showed me a poll and they said there was like 51% Christian, I wouldn't doubt it.
Okay.
But I haven't seen that number. But again, like my point is not, hey, you should join the Satanic Church. In fact, chances are, if you're watching this, there's a good chance that I will tell you that we're not interested in you anyway. There's a lot of people who are probably going to look at the church and say like, this is, or the religion and say, this is not something that I want. Fine. Then, do what you want.
Okay.
This is definitely something for people who look at this and say like, hey, this is something that I'm interested in. There's some things here that I find valuable and that might help me in my life. Great. Then we're here for you. And if not, fine, do your own thing.
Okay. Well, on the other side of things, how common do you think you'd say it is for a Satanist to be a libertarian?
Very common. Most of the Satanists that I've seen running around, with the exception of the Satanic Temple, obviously,
Okay.
real Satanists.
Real Satanists. Real Scotsman.
We'll get into that. So the Satanists that I've seen around who actually talk about Satanism as it's written by Anton LaVey, have been overwhelmingly libertarian, and if not libertarian, very libertarian leaning, maybe even kind of more objectivist kind of libertarian, especially since that's kind of the birthplace of it, I guess, is kind of one, or at least one of the founding ideas for it was Rand. So yeah, like when I say they're not real Satanists. So Satanism has never been codified as religion anywhere throughout time up until 1966 with Anton LaVey. And since then, there have been a lot of people who kind of like take that thing, like, oh, I'm going to be edgy or whatever. And one of which is the Satanic Temple, which are a group of progressives who just take that as an order way to troll Christians. And
as a way to just be edgy. So you really Satanists just trying to be edgy. Wow.
Well, so a lot of it came from the churches trying to push the state into erecting state-funded monuments to the religious faith, right? So you had the 10 Commandments at a courthouse, or a manger scene at a thing. And so what they do is they say, hey, if you're going to spend taxpayer money on that Christian thing over there, why don't you put up a signal Baphomet over here? Or why don't you put on the Baphomet statue over here? And that's kind of a lot where that came from, which I can appreciate a good troll, but now they're kind of taking it seriously, like, oh no, we actually do like Satanism. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things in your satanic rules that are definitely against Anton's, and Anton was a codifier of Satanism. If it's not what he's, it's not really Satanism. It could be Satan, like a, what is it? How did Carl Hess call it?
I don't know.
Satanism, but with adjectives, right? You could do something like that.
Well, okay, so as I understand it so far, you're not saying that libertarians should be Satanists. In fact, you're saying a lot of them should not be. But it seems like you might be saying that Satanists should be libertarians, like specifically, like more so even than other people.
Yeah,
right.
I think you'd be out of step with your own religion if you were to be something like a Marxist. You'd definitely be way out of step.
Okay.
I mean, I guess you could, but it would be way out of step because there's a lot of things in here that are explicitly talking about private property rights and stuff like that. So, individualism.
Okay. All right. A couple of other little things that I wanted to jump on that I was just curious in my reading through all of this stuff. Actually, this is again from the 11 Satanic Rules. Do not kill non-human animals unless you're attacked or for your food. Does that mean you can't like wear leather and shit like that?
Well, leather I think comes from cattle, doesn't it? From food cattle, and they just take the leather and produce it for other things, don't they?
So if there was an animal that was killed just for the clothing, like whether I can think of one off the top of my head or not, is that actually anti-Satanism?
I guess what he was really getting at was like anti-game hunting. Anton was a very big fan of.
Well, that's pretty anti-libertarian if you can't go game hunting. A lot of libertarians like that.
Well, he wouldn't say you would want to pass a law. He would say, if you're following this religion, this is the best way of getting on.
Okay.
But Anton was very much a lover of animals. In fact, he had a pet lion at his house in San Francisco for the longest time. And he was raised, or I guess was he raised? I know he was trained in as a carny. He spent most of his life being a carny and an organ player for the circus, and he was interested in lion taming and had a pet lion. So he was very, very much a lover of animals, and that's why you see a lot of the stuff in the Satanic Bible talking about how animals are sometimes superior to man in some ways.
Animals are superior to men. In what way?
Yeah, in some ways.
Go on.
Well, maybe we could dig out the portion
I
of the
mean,
book
you
where he's
can't
talking
think of
about
one
this.
way in which you think, like, what do you think animals are better than humans in some ways?
Well, I mean, I think it'd probably be my life would be a lot easier if I was my cat, except when I wanted to chew on things.
Having an easy life makes you better. And
They don't give
isn't
a
that better
fuck.
for Mephi because you're a human and you take care of her? I don't know.
Maybe.
That seems like humans are better again. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm blanking on the examples, but he does talk about some of that stuff in the book. So,
Okay.
sorry, I don't have the whole book memorized. I should.
Yeah. All right. So we've also got questions in the chat.
Okay,
What even
cool.
is this topic? Yeah, that's a good question. What even
it's a
is
good
this
question.
topic? So there's a couple of other ways I wanted to get into this. One was through egoism. So are you an egoist?
I guess Satanism is a type of egoism. So in that
Right.
sense, yes. And I do find a lot of value in a lot of egoist writers, including Stirner, even though I have some disagreements with Stirner.
Wasn't Stirner a leftist? Or was that misrepresentation of him?
Yeah, that's hard. Okay, so Stirner was one of those kind of guys who never really pinned what he was. He was just really talking about what you shouldn't be. And
Okay.
so there was things where he's talking about how you shouldn't be a sacred socialist, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be a sacred liberal, shouldn't have any kind of sacred cows whatsoever, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But he actually wasn't saying you shouldn't do any of those things. He's just saying this is the best way of getting on. He never really pinned down what he was. He did have some criticisms of liberalism, which I don't agree with. He had some kind of idea of how he thinks like a consistent version of egoism would apply to kind of interactions with other people called the union of egoists, which I think is useful in some senses. I don't think it's the only way. So I disagree with
Can
them
you
there.
just like, this has been a lot of esoteric knowledge, so let's get specific on that
Okay.
one. What's a union of egoists?
So a union of egoists is an idea that he had where he said, look, if you're in a relationship with anyone, be it to pursue a goal or to you're part of some sort of organization or a friendship or anything like that, that everybody in the group in this union of egoists should not be suffering, and they should all work together towards their goal. And then once that goal is achieved, they go upon their separate ways. And if one person in the group is suffering because of what's going on in the group, it can no longer be called a union of egoists. So
Okay.
it's kind of almost like a collective where there's no hierarchy. So again, there's a lot of stuff that he was talking about where I think that might work for like how friends work or maybe how we can work on a project together. But I don't think that's a great way to organize all organizations.
Okay.
So I have some disagreements with him on that. So
getting
I
into
mean,
it,
again,
we might actually do an entirely separate one on egoism. Now that I'm thinking
I
about it,
might
because
have to find you someone.
Yeah.
I'll have to find you someone who's much more of an egoist who could defend that stuff a lot better.
Right. So I think
like
getting
I
into
have some
that,
disagreements with that.
I think getting into that would be a whole other topic. It was probably already gotten a little esoteric. A lot of people probably don't know what we're talking about. So okay, all right.
Satanism, that's our word.
Um,
Exactly.
I'm gonna go with. I've already given, I think, my due diligence to a belief that I don't have Christianity here, and why there might be some problems there. I'm gonna go with my actual own view and why I'm potentially anti-Satanism. So first of all, the idea there seems to be that humans have a fundamental need for the religious, all of these ceremonies, rituals, and this kind of magical thinking, even if it's only sort of surface level. Right? You use the word magic even though you don't really believe in magic, things like that. You seem to want to entertain that part of your brain that thinks in magic with this religion. Now, if you're trying to do that, what if that whole thing is just like it's more of an exit wound, as it were, than it was a god-shaped hole? If you see what I'm saying, that maybe the reason that we have that need for the religious in the first place is because people left a religion. When you talk about Satanists who realized that they became a Satanist because they realized that when they became an atheist, they lost all of that meaning. Maybe that's only because it's a kind of that kind of magic was something that they relied on previously. But if they hadn't to begin with, they wouldn't have needed it. right? So
Well, then
is not
again,
Satanism merely a reactive thing, and without Christianity you wouldn't need it?
well, are there symbols and traditions that you agree with? Like, if there's things in your country that you identify with, maybe
Sure.
not like a nationalism type of thing, but like maybe like an anarcho-capitalist flag,
Absolutely,
like
yeah. Like
this one.
I'm not against
I don't know you. That's my first.
symbols and
Okay,
traditions. I'm just
but
why do you need to pretend it's magic?
so I think that it's a much better way to identify with symbols, rites, traditions, and stuff like that. At at worst harmless, rather than ones that could get you into some big trouble, like ideological ones or religious ones and stuff like that. And if I do believe that most people do, regardless if they were born atheists and never came into contact with any of that stuff. I still think at the end of the day, people want to identify with some sort of symbol, something that they can wear on their lapel, or something that they could, backpack or have a tattoo of, or something like that. I think at the end, people do want that sort of thing. People have avatars on their accounts. That's not something that
Right.
that was forced upon us by the big, by Fang or anything like that. This is stuff that people want, and so they offer
Okay.
that stuff to them. So people want those traditions, rights, symbols, and stuff. So
I
again,
I
if
get that
if
they
I'm going
do
to choose
want
that,
them
I'm going
though.
to choose.
I
Yeah.
get they do want them, but will they always? Like would those same people who left Christianity and then became Satanists, would they still feel that same longing for that kind of magical veneer to their rituals if that wasn't what they left behind? Like if that does Satanism tend to appeal to people who were brought up like as atheists? Is that something you've seen before?
Maybe. So I was brought up deist, and last time I checked, there was no symbol for deism. I could be wrong. I never identified with one.
Okay.
So I did become a Christian very shortly when I was, in junior high, but whatever that means. And I wasn't too big on it, and I had some questions that couldn't be answered, and because I couldn't answer them, I just read the Bible, and I was like, well, that was a load of shit. And then so I just became an atheist, and it wasn't until decades later that I was like, oh, what's this Satanism thing?
Okay.
So the whole religious part of religious aspect stuff never really interested me at all up until later in my life. So it wasn't something that I identified with.
Okay.
But now that I have this stuff, and I kind of like it.
All right, now that you have that stuff in your life, you like it, so arguably it is something fundamental and core to people. And okay,
At
fair
least with
enough.
me.
At least with
And if,
you,
if it's
to
just
a lot
and
of
if it's
people.
interests other people, yeah, and if it interests you, that there is something out there for them. But chances are we don't want you anyway. So
Okay, all right,
we've been over that.
that's fine. It's not like I wanted to anyway. Yeah,
So you won't hang out with me? Well, I don't want to play with you anyway.
yeah. All right, so if that is a fundamental need for people, or for a lot of people, what if you are pacifying part of you that could be otherwise put towards good use? What if so the Church of Satan constantly, if you look at their Twitter feed or their FAQ on their website, they're constantly saying we're apolitical, we don't get involved in politics at all, we're not
They
endorsing
kind of
anyone,
do though. They
anyone
kind
or
of do
anything.
though.
Okay, but they at least
Occasionally they do, but not really.
they
Yeah,
at least
I
present the
understand what
idea
you're
they're not
saying.
meant to.
Yeah.
So isn't that kind of a waste, right? If we've got all of these rituals and symbols that a whole lot of people identify with, why waste it on memes and just having fun with Satanism when you could have, like, if it's arbitrary, if it really doesn't matter what you're picking because you don't think it's real anyway, why not base it on something like the Church of Anarcho-Capitalism? We worship the invisible hand, something like that.
Well,
Why
hey, if you want to
would you
start that
want?
religion, we can do it. I hope you write the book. I'll ghostwrite it with you and everything. And
Right.
I'm down to do it, and I'll drop all this stuff. But that doesn't exist. So,
Right. So you're actually
so
you're
if
open
there,
to that. You'd be willing to convert to the Church of the Invisible Hand.
yes, sign me up. Let's do
Holy
this.
crap! All right. I think this is
But I
good. We're
do
gonna get a
think,
new religion going here.
but I do think there's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of that's not explicitly libertarian, that kind of leads people in the libertarian path. So maybe if someone was just like, they probably are on the progressive path anyway, right? And they were like, "Oh, what's this Satanism thing?" I've seen some church's temple bullshit that they've done. Let's check it out. Let's actually read the book. And they're going to be, oh, I agree with this. I agree with this. And they're going to see that, oh, this stuff came from Anton LaVey or Ayn Rand. A lot of the stuff came from Ayn Rand. Like, what has Ayn Rand written? I had never read her. I just heard bad things on the internet. I actually read it. So there's lots of people who come to libertarianism through Satanism.
Yeah. Come to libertarianism by reading Ayn Rand. My last interviewee would be very upset that you said that.
But there are lots of people who come through libertarianism through Ayn Rand.
That's why I told him.
Deny it all he wants.
No, he doesn't deny that.
I know lots of people who came to libertarianism through objectivism.
True.
So.
Yes. No.
Yeah, it's a good.
All right. So I don't. So you think that libertarianism and Satanism are compatible, and you think Satanists probably ought to be libertarians.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then why should the church remain apolitical? Right? Why can't the church say, Bernie Sanders is anti-Satanist. He's a heretic according to the Lord Lucifer or Satan or whatever.
Well, I think there's I appreciate the subversity, right? Because they're teaching a lot of libertarian principles, but not coaxing it in a political sense. They're saying like, you should do these sorts of things, and it's like, oh, hey, that seems kind of good. Like rational egoism. Like if I go out and do what's best for me, I'm going to end up benefiting other people along the way. And it's like, well, where'd that idea come from? Oh, okay. So this kind of comes from libertarian thoughts. But again, like I'm not a member of the Church of Satan. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not a representative of them. So you're asking me to defend an organization I'm not even a part of. But if you were asking me to defend of any other Satan kind of groups, that's going to be the one that I'm probably going to defend more often. So I just want to make that clear in case anyone's listening. I'm not trying to like distance myself and be like, oh, don't associate me with that stuff. But yeah, right. In the end, I agree with most of the stuff they do. I do think so. Like one of the stances I definitely don't agree with is obviously their intellectual property, abortion. They have like this strong sense of like, I forgot, brain fart. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. There's lots of different things I disagree with.
That's fair enough. All right. Like in that case, let's move on.
They think that churches should be taxed like any business, and I'm like, no, just no one should be taxed.
No. Yes, I did actually find that, and I was gonna. They've been tweeting about that. That's another thing. So I won't bring the tweet up on screen because it's just too much of a hassle. But I'll just tell you basically what it was about. They were opposed to some legislation I saw digging through where churches were going to be able to form their own police forces. And that sounds fucking excellent, to be honest. Not that I want theocracy enforced, just like that starting to get the starts of a polycentric police force. So I don't know, is the Church of Satan wrong there? Are you opposing?
Yeah, I would say that they're wrong there. I understand where they're coming at this and where they're probably thinking that's going to lead to, but I don't think that's correct. Like, I think they're looking at it more probably like, hey, like the Vatican has their own army and they're going to start another crusade type of thing, rather than just going like, hey, look, there's a private organization that wants to, govern a certain area somewhere where a bunch of Catholics live, and they want to pay this organization to provide them services and protect them from bad people. Like, okay, that's fine. I have no problem with that. So I think they're wrong in that sense. I think they're maybe seeing the history of a lot of the Catholic Church's groups of forces and wanting them to not happen again. Like we didn't want another Crusades type of thing.
Well, I don't know.
Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects that.
Were the Crusades really wrong, though? Anyway, no, that's a whole other topic. So
we can.
Anyway. I also want to ask a little bit more about your history, and I don't know if we actually quite got this yet. Does your libertarianism come first? What came first as you were changing your mind about stuff? Did you become a libertarian or a Satanist first?
Yeah, so I've been a libertarian since 2007, and I became a Satanist around 2016-ish. Yeah, about that time. Yeah, I think so.
Can you tell us a little bit more of your becoming a libertarian thing?
Oh, great. So I was very active when I was 18 or so, very active in my local organization of the Green Party, I was
The Green
basically a
Party?
watermelon. Yes.
Holy shit.
So the Green Party in the United States is a little bit different than yours. Yours is a little bit more hipster, and plus time has passed since then.
Well, ours is just communist.
Right. Well, they're watermelons. Like I was a watermelon. It's red on the inside, green on the outside. So I campaigned twice for Peter Camejo's gubernatorial runs in California, once for the general and once for the recall election, which if you haven't checked out the California recall election of 2003, that's an interesting time to go and look around. But there was nothing wrong with it. Like it didn't sit right with me because, you know, I was like, I don't agree with this affirmative action stuff. Why do they keep talking about it? Maximum wage. I don't know about all that stuff. And there was just something not sitting right with me. And the more I kind of looked into economics, but it was just mainstream economic stuff, the more I kind of started to move a little bit more towards the center. And I thought I found a home with like the Democrats, you know, the more moderate Democrats, but something still wasn't sitting right with me. And I didn't know what it was until I saw two magicians that I was a huge fan of when I was a kid, Penn and Teller, do a show called Bullshit. And I was like, oh, I agree with this thing, you know, that they're talking about. I'm going to like, they did an episode about the Bible. Who'd have thunk it? Great kind of shoe in, I guess. Huh. I was like, yeah, I agree with that. Like, you know, the Bible is bullshit. What's the next episode? Oh, how PETA is a terrorist organization. Wait, what? I thought they just wanted to help little puppies and kittens. And so I was like, okay, what's the next episode? Like, okay, I guess they are evil. What's the next episode? Oh, something I agree with. Okay, yeah, this is great. Yeah, kick their ass. And then there's something that, you know, that I did agree with that they were busting. And I was like, and it was just every other episode. It was attacking something that I believed. And I was like, what are these guys anyway? Because how could they only believe half of the things that I do? Normally, they're either conservatives and I disagree with everything, or they're progressives and I agree with everything, right? Okay. So I looked into it. I was like, what is this libertarian thing? And so I started reading that, started making fun of anarchists after I became a libertarian, saying like, ANCAPs are stupid. Do we need government? And then I saw a book called The Libertarian Manifesto, which I thought was going to be, oh, this is going to be like a small government, like, you know, book telling us how we need a small government. And no, it was Murray Rothbard. And I listened to the audiobook on a train. I got on the train of anarchist and got off an anarchist. And that was in 2007. Yeah.
Okay.
And Rothbard tricked me into being an ANCAP.
Tricked you?
Tricked me.
Oh, man. Okay.
Which I
still haven't recovered.
I still haven't recovered. I'm still in the pit.
Although you did a little bit, because as I understand it, you're now not an Austro-libertarian.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. So, are you still a big fan of Rothbard's?
There's things I like Rothbard about. There's still lots of things that I still like listening to Mises lectures and stuff, even though I don't agree with everything. It's kind of like how I can enjoy some Ayn Rand work, even though I'm not an objectivist. There's some things that she says that I think are really kind of insightful, and there's other things that I'm just like, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic I've ever heard, etc. So there's kind of I can pick the good things out of stuff and ignore the bad.
Okay. Let's start getting into some specifics though, because I don't want this to just be a story. I want to get into some of the meat.
Oh, okay.
So like, can you give us something that turned you off of the Austro-libertarian movement, and made you more? What would you call yourself? Chicago libertarian, or just kind of? Okay.
Yeah, I do like a lot of the like behavioral economic stuff too.
Okay.
But one of the things that was kind of like irking me was like the non-aggression principle. Okay. Especially when I started hearing people who I admired talking about the non-aggression principle, and like, wait a minute, it's okay to starve children to death? Like something's wrong here. And so I just started like looking into it and looking at criticism, because that's one of the first things I do when I enjoy something. I was like, well, what do the critics say? You know, maybe they have a point, or maybe there's some nuance in the middle that I should be sitting at. Okay. And I started listening to, you know, kind of like the typical stuff that you would see from socialists, and I was like, this is all garbage. But it wasn't until I, you know, heard some good points from David Friedman, who was talking about things like, you know, the revolving gun scenario, where like, hey, like, is it aggression for me to force you to play Russian roulette with one bullet in the chamber and 5 empty chambers? Well, what if it's 1 in 100? What if it's 1 in 1,000? And I was like, well, okay, well, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, how is that any different than driving a car, since you're putting other people at risk who weren't agreeing to play this game with you? People who are walking on down the street, people who are living in their homes, who you're going to crash through the wall and kill them, that sort of thing. And I was
Okay.
like,
Well, does I agree there that there's some gray area.
mhm.
Just to elaborate there, as I understand your criticism, the idea is because there's some gray area in your gun example. Should we play, like, if I force you to play Russian roulette, that is basically the same as having some chance of killing you. If I drive my car really fast and I have some chance of killing you, so a lot of things I do will have some chance of killing you. Where do we draw the line? But that's just gray area. There's gray area in pretty much everything. Like, even you. Like, I imagine you think that you currently exist, but like, I can draw some gray area. Like, is your hair still part of you?
Well, I'm in
like, if I
black and
tapped
white,
you on the
so-
shoulder through your clothes, you'd say I touched you, even though I didn't really. If your hair is you, at what point does it stop being you? Like, when it falls out. There's gray area with literally everything. So surely you could still have the principle.
You're talking about the continuum then.
Yeah, but surely you could still have a principle, because you're able to generally draw a pretty hard line with the non-aggression principle.
Okay.
So that would still work. So how's that a criticism of the non-aggression principle? Just saying there's gray area. It's the same level of criticism we have against the concept of you or your anything literally else.
Well, see, I do like the non-aggression principle. I think that's a good start. I think it's a rule of thumb. It's when people start talking about it as being an axiom, and that it should never be broken no matter what. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. And a lot of libertarians come at it from that perspective. And I'm like, that can't be right, because that would forbid a lot of good things and allow for a lot of bad things that I don't think anybody would agree with, including the people who are supposedly professing this kind of view. So as a rule of thumb, like, the non-aggression principle is pretty good. But I also think you have to look at the consequences. Like, really, like, what's the problem with patting someone on the shoulder who didn't agree with it? Probably nothing, right? So
probably nothing. But in that situation, wouldn't that just be because you are confident that they are consenting to it? So as far like you believe that you are not aggressing upon them in that situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was your example, but
yeah. Well, no, my example was patting you on the shoulder through some clothes. Anyway.
Anyways.
Okay, but yeah, so if the patting on the shoulder one doesn't work, though, then what other example would work?
So I mean, driving the car. We can talk about the driving the car one we just talked about.
Okay. Yeah, if you drive a car,
I'm putting not just other motorists. I'm putting pedestrians, people living in their houses who didn't consent to you driving on their property at all. There's all kinds of car manufacturing. So all kinds of mechanical. So for instance, like I had a 81 Honda. How dare you? That when my transmission gave out, I had it fixed, and when they fixed it, like I shifted the gear, it would sometimes, not always, but sometimes swerve the car over. And then one day I let my friend borrow the car, and it did that to him, and he went across oncoming traffic, luckily didn't get hit, and then landed into a ditch. Now let's say he actually hit someone. Did all those people who were maybe walking down the street, or maybe whatever house he may have hit, or whatever car he may have hit, agree to like put themselves at risk by putting maybe the other motorists? But you couldn't say that for anyone else. And so if you're going to say that's an axiom that you should always follow, and you should never put anyone at risk ever for anything as an axiom, then you shouldn't do that. But if you're going to say it's just a principle, it's just a rule, kind of rule of thumb, and yeah, there's some gray areas, and you don't want to fall too much into the continuum fallacy and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Okay. But a lot of libertarians don't. They think that's an axiom. It's a deontological rule that you should never, ever, 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 ever break. So
okay. All right. Well, I think I'm kind of cheating a little bit here with this interview, because I just sort of talk. I agree with pretty much all of that. So I kind of took a moment just to get you to confirm my own beliefs for me, just tell them back to me, because it's quite nice. It's a ritual I enjoy. But yeah,
Hail Satan.
Yeah, going back to Satan. Christ, what even is this? All right, going back to Satan. I kind of want to, I was kind of hoping
Peace be
that
upon
there'd
him.
be I want you to argue a little bit more with the non-libertarian Satanists. So, do you get a lot of pushback amongst the Satanists? Like, have you ever been told by a Satanist you're not a real Satanist because you're a libertarian? Is there any pushback?
No.
No.
How I have not run into any Temple of Satan type of people. I guess the only one that I have run into is James Weeks, who I don't think he's really active with them at all.
Wait, James Weeks, isn't that the guy who got naked in the Libertarian Party stage?
Yeah.
So that guy's a Satanist as well.
He's a Satanic Temple member. I would not call him a Satanist. I would call him a pseudo Satanist.
Okay.
As would any Satanic church.
Okay, well,
outside of the temple.
So for James Weeks, who's definitely watching this, I guarantee it.
Hi, James.
Why is he not a real Satanist?
Well, because he definitely says things that are contra Satanism. He's interested. He's not interested. Well, he's definitely not. I guess he is an individualist, but he definitely does take some socialist views on things, which I think contradict it. Okay. He's definitely not.
Why? Can you go? Basically, what I'm trying to do is get you to go into that a little bit more. I want you to talk a bit more about how you can say Satanism and socialism contradict. Why? I am a Satanist and a socialist. Now, tell me why that's contradictory.
Okay, so you would have to be an individualist first. It's definitely hard about private property, owning yourself, right?
Okay.
So why are we rejecting all of these kind of fundamental principles if you're a Satanist and then a communist at the same time? I think there's running into some contradictions there.
Well, why? So does Anton LaVey actually talk about private property? Because from what I could see, it was maybe leaning in that direction from my reading of it, but I don't see anything explicit. If I'm just going through the satanic rules, the best I could find there was stuff like when in another's lair, show them respect or else do not go there. But I mean, that's compatible with socialism because they still believe in that personal private property distinction. You can still own the place you live. You can still own your house, right? So that seems perfectly compatible.
Well, first of all, they would be violating the lack of aesthetics, right? I mean, hammer and sickles are just ugly.
Okay.
There's some self-deceit going on here, right?
Okay.
And it's stupid. So that would be the highest sin in the Church of Satan.
But the thing that I'm getting at there is those are all criticisms that will work totally absent Satanism, right? These are all things like it's dumb, and Satanism says don't be dumb, and that's kind of a bit weak. Is there anything specifically that you think
we did talk
Satanism?
We did. So again, it's an Epicurean philosophy. I think they're a little bit more maybe on the Stoic side. A lot of this is, I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know. I have to cross that one off my list.
Okay, you have to find some more stuff to dunk on socialist Satanists with. Yeah.
So they definitely don't believe in the silver rule, do unto others as they do unto me, right? They're definitely more interested in taking stuff from you. Now, they're more interested in taking stuff from you and giving it to them.
Yeah, but through a democratic process, which you are also free to engage in.
Okay. Let's see.
So, maybe I'm going to become a Satanist socialist at the end of this interview.
Okay, then. We're done here. No, I have nothing to say to you. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I have to go back into it and really dig into where this stuff comes from. But if someone wanted to be that, I'm just going to be like, well, that's kind of weird, whatever, and try to talk them out of it. However, I do think there's enough stuff in there that if you walk away from that, especially when they're talking about rational egoism, that you benefit yourself more. Or if you can benefit people more by mostly focusing on what's good for you, and if you do that, you're going to get through life pretty well. And that's just something that Stirner has talked about, that Ragnar Redbeard has talked about, that Rand has talked about. Virtually every libertarian talks about. Yeah, these are just kind of, and it would kind of be out of step for socialists, because socialists are like, no, we need to take altruism as our first step, which would be a pretty contradictory point. So there you go.
I guess so. Okay, that seems fair enough. I'll accept that. You did okay. That's right. All right. So I think we've been going for about an hour here. So I just wanted to know if there's anything about Satanism, libertarianism, or the connection between the two that you wanted to get out there. Is there something that I should have asked? Is there something else you wanted to say?
So you did say something earlier. I don't know if you noticed me wincing when you said it, but you said that Satanists were atheists, which is sort of true, but not really.
Okay.
Satanists are atheists. They see themselves as the master of their own destiny, their own personal god, and there's no one in greater control of their life than themselves, and that they are the ones who have to put forth the effort to make their lives better. It's not to say that changing. That's not say no. That's not this. Well, sorry. Go ahead.
Isn't that just changing what God means? I mean, God's a big beady dude in the sky who tells you not to masturbate. Like, you don't believe in that guy,
right?
Right.
But so if you're the person telling yourself not to masturbate, then you obey him. Then he is your own God.
Okay.
So yeah, we kind of consider ourselves on God. We're the master of our own destiny, and we can will things into existence through magic, within reason, obviously. Because if you're stupid about your things, then you're a sinner in the Church of Satan, because you're violating the rule against stupidity.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we have to admit that it's a shame that stupidity doesn't hurt.
I mean, sometimes it does. You can do stupid things and get hurt. I've seen the compilation videos.
You've seen America's Funniest, or what is it? Australia's Funniest Home Videos, or
Austria's Funniest Home Videos. That would be interesting. Why not?
Australian. I know there's one in Australia. I didn't know if there's one in New Zealand too. So
no, we just get served America's Funniest Home Videos here. We don't have anything of our own. We just consume other people's stuff. There's like 4 million of us. What do you want?
I thought there was 6. Anyway, so have we talked much about Epicureanism at all yet?
No, I'm not too clear on how that relates. So why don't you fill us in on that? Okay,
so you probably heard of hedonism, and probably heard of it in a negative tone, right? So hedonism is an idea that kind of gets floated around as being like, oh, everybody, is going to be leisurely proportioned like me, who's a hedonist. But I would say that I'm a bad hedonist. The reason why I'm a bad hedonist is because, sure, I'm enjoying getting as much pleasure as I can, according to what Epicureanism says. Okay. I would be, I'm getting a lot of pleasure from eating and doing all that stuff. But I'm bad in the sense that, it's a detriment to my health, which is why I'm on a diet and drinking beer. Obviously, I'm well on my path.
Yeah, hedonism is something that's always been a little bit confusing to me, because it says whatever is going to give you the most pleasure. It's like, really? Do you actually want that? Like, hypothetically, would you get strapped into the machine that just makes your brain capable of nothing else but pleasure and just keeps you barely fed and safe, so just constantly feeling pleasure and you're never doing anything? Like, you get the option to go into that machine, do you go in?
I think it would be fun to go into the machine, but not all the time. I think at a certain point you kind of lose your mental faculties and you start going a little bit nuts.
But if you lost your mental faculties but you're constantly feeling maximum pleasure, then you should do it according to hedonism.
But how long would you really feel pleasure in a thing like that? After a while, it would start to get to you, and you'd be chasing the dragon.
No, it wouldn't, because it could literally just pump the endorphins right into your brain. And let me put it this way.
But you would build you'd build up a resistance to it. Reasonably, you'd build up a resistance to it.
Okay, but it would still give you. You're not going to get more by going out of the machine, and so therefore, no matter what, you're never going to get more pleasure by leaving the machine.
I don't know about all that.
Well, so if you go see a beautiful sunset, that might release some endorphins, but we could just directly inject the endorphins, is what I'm saying. Right? Well, would you? And in any case, it works just as a hypothetical. Even if we drop the practical nature of it, like,
I only listened to the first 2 words of that. Go ahead. Sorry again.
It works just as a hypothetical. Okay. Is basically what I was trying to say. So
do you get in the
pleasure machine? Do you get in the pleasure machine assuming that it would work? Like, you'll just constantly feel pleasure. You'll forget everything. Let's say
you'll
just basically be a blob of pleasure, and you'll never do anything else.
So let's say there is such a machine, and there is no negative detriments. There's no long-term effects that come of it. Then why not? But that machine doesn't exist.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Because I would have thought that would be an obviously no, I wouldn't. Okay, well, what if by getting into that machine, you'd cause an enormous amount of suffering to a lot of other people? Then would you get into it?
Well, are those people who are going to be suffering at the hands of me being in the pod try to get me out of the pod somehow?
No, you're perfectly safe.
Is that even possible? I mean, if I'm
not,
causing a lot of suffering to a lot of people, don't you
this,
think?
The reason I'm asking this is I'm trying to tease out, like, fundamentally, are you really just saying you only care about pleasure? Like, there seems to be other things you care about.
Well, see, you have to care about other things. Absolutely have to care about other things. You just can't say like, well, eating pizza makes me feel good, so I'm just going to eat nothing but pizza. What are the long-term effects of eating pizza?
Hold on, but that's you just thinking about the long-term effects. I'm giving you a situation in which the long-term effects are all good in terms of pleasure, but there are negative effects that have nothing to do with your pleasure, right? Do you actually care about the well-being of others, or do you just care about it because you like the feeling of being a good person? Right?
Okay, so
we can make you forget that you hurt all those people, and you'll just be constant pleasure forever, right? Do you get into the machine? Because if you would, then okay, you actually only care about maximizing pleasure, taking into account a long-term view. But if you wouldn't, that means you care about other things than pleasure.
So Epicureanism in isolation with nothing else, then I guess that would be the right thing, and just be like, just go in there. However, I don't think that fits in with rational egoism. I've not been, because I think in reality, I mean, sure, you're in your example, fine. Like I'll be safe from any kind of angry mob that's upset that I'm in the machine, which but let's just say that is the case. Then then it'd probably be the best thing to do under Epicureanism. However, with all the other things that I kind of include in my life, I think that it's important to like not make other people suffer at the hands of it, especially since if I'm going to try to kind of, try to set myself as some sort of good person, within the community. And I know that I'm probably going to benefit. There's going to be a time where I need to get out of the machine to maybe, I don't know, pay the electric bills to get the machine working, or maybe refill it with food so I can get back in.
Don't fight
don't fight
the hypothetical, Jim. Don't fight it. Just let it happen.
Fine,
like the hypothetical's there to figure out what you care about, not to give you a plausible actual course of action. I don't have this machine, Jim. I'm not actually offering you.
Yeah, but I would also be concerned about people that I care about and like, who are going to be upset with them because they like me and I'm in the pod hurting a bunch of people. So I'm going to have to take those into consideration as well. Right.
Okay. So you do care about stuff so you're not a strict hedonist, but you think pleasure is important, but you value other things too? Fair to say?
Yeah, it's Epicureanism in defiance of Stoicism, I guess. That'd probably be the best.
Okay, right. Yeah. So it's more the negative side of that, right? You're opposed to philosophies which definitely exist, which kind of portray pleasure itself as a negative. Is more like an opposition to those.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then in that case, I think I'd agree with that. Anyway.
So I mean,
you're going to say test. I have the machine, and you're not getting into it now.
Yeah, Epicureanism in a vacuum. Then you would get in the pod and say "fuck you." But I do value other people, and it brings me pleasure to know that like my friends and family are safe while I'm outside of the pod. So I'm gonna be like, pod sounds good. Can I just do it on weekends or?
There's an interesting thing that the DDV show, my guest from the last one of these last week, I think. Or I think it was 2 weeks ago. Who knows? It takes so long to do these. And he says, hedonism places happiness as the primary value to achieve, which is anti-human qua human nature. Happiness is a reward for achieving values by way of virtues. Right. So some of that I think I agree with, especially that happiness is a reward for achieving values. Mm-hmm. Right. Like that happiness, you can treat happiness as good, but because it's like a reward you get for fulfilling your values. And not that happiness is in itself good. It's just a way of getting yourself to do good.
Yeah. However, I would like to point out that again, that you just don't look at the immediate kind of response to it. So if you whatever anti-humanist thing that you're doing is probably going to upset the people around you, and they're going to cause people to hate you. This is just basic rational egoism. Okay. But like. Again, I like to pull up this example. If I get a lot of pleasure from sex and I'm going around having sex with as many partners as possible, there's going to be lots of negative side effects to that. So you have to kind of balance like what is pleasure versus now versus pleasure that I'm going to have in the long term? Am I going to get some sort of disease? Am I going to, yeah, sure, I can get a lot of pleasure from eating pizza all the time, but
I
yeah,
think
I
I
get leisurely
still
proportioned and get backaches and hypertension and heart disease and blah 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 blah.
I think this is also the because I think I disagree with this. I think and it's also the same reason I disagree with objectivism, or one of them, and that is like you seem to be constantly referring to negative consequences that will happen in the long term as a result of you taking actions that in the short term cause you pleasure or cause you fulfillment, or that you want, or whatever it is, depending on which philosophy we're talking about. But that's why I tried to construct my hypothetical, right? I constructed it such that the long term is no longer something you're taking into account. Because if you're constantly referring to consequences, long term consequences, in order to say why you're not doing this thing to harm other people, it seems like you're dodging the question of whether you do actually care about harming, whether or not you harm people. The actual question is, like, absent the long term consequences, do you still not want to harm others?
I think you'd be a bad Epicurean. You'd be a bad hedonist if you did. I mean, you could do all those things and only look at the short term. But if
No, I'm not saying only look at the short term. I'm saying look at the short term and the long term, but do it in such a way that it harms a lot of other people. I think most people would choose not to do that. I think most people, maybe I'm being naive here, but I think most people would not get in my magic pleasure box, right? If they're going to hurt everyone else, let's say, by getting in the magic pleasure box, even if it'll cause them pleasure forever, and even if they'll forget having done it, so the guilt thing is out of the window. We're getting rid of all of the consequences, and we're just isolating here in our thought experiment the thing of harming other people. Once that's decoupled from the long-term consequences and all that stuff, do you still care about whether or not you harm people? Because I think you do. Do you?
Yeah, all right, I'd still care about her harming other people, especially since
Right.
the people that I care about are probably going to either be harmed directly or indirectly through that as well. So I mean, I do care, and if I'm just going to live in the pleasure box, then whatever. But I'm not a pure Epicurean in that
Right.
sense. Like I do think there's other things you have to consider as well.
Okay.
Right. So
All
I
right.
mean, yeah.
So, if
It's
being
kind
an
of like
Epicurean,
how objectivists like the non-aggression principle, except when it comes to the state or intellectual
Yes.
property.
Yes. No, that was interesting. Okay. So, by being not a pure Epicurean, are you also being not a pure Satanist, if these things are related?
No, because there's parts of it that come from Epicurean. There's stuff that comes from Redbeard, and there's stuff that comes, well, Redbeard also comes from Stirner.
Okay.
And there's things that come from Ayn Rand, and he's picking and choosing the things that he likes
Okay.
and thinks that it would benefit other people if they got a hold of it. And I think I benefit from that, from doing that. There's also other things.
And you're also not saying that but you're not saying you agree with Anton on everything, though, right? You have your disagreements with him.
Yeah, so I definitely disagree with him on intellectual property. I definitely disagree with him on.
But even the more like fundamental philosophical stuff, do you disagree with him on anything there?
Don't think there's anything like fundamental to Satanism that I disagree with. If there was, I probably would find something else. But in terms of the fundamentals, like sure, there's some off things that he talks about that I wasn't a big fan of. But there's stuff that I do.
I heard that he removed in his adaptation of Redbeard's work. He removed all the racism and sexism, and obviously that's terrible.
That was obvious a mistake.
Yeah, I know, right? We got rid of the best part.
Yeah, especially the parts about cooking meatballs. That was really just out of line.
What?
There's gonna be like 5 people watching this going like, I know what he's talking about, and everybody else is going, what?
Yeah,
meatballs?
including yours truly. Do you want to explain, or do you want to leave that as an Easter egg for those who know?
The best part about making meatballs.
No, I'm going to leave that alone.
What are All right.
I'm just going to leave that alone.
Okay, so we've been going about now.
So yeah, Ragnar Redbeard. Which, by the way, if you haven't read the book, you can get it from Underworld Amusement. They just recently pulled it from Amazon for being too racist, but you can still get Mein Kampf, which is German for Mein Wall, which lays out the diagram that Hitler wanted to build the Berlin Wall, which he succeeded in doing. anyways.
What?
So anyways, yeah, read a book. Come on. Anyways, you can get a copy from the Underworld Amusement. It's a great read. It's also available on the archives. It's in the public domain. But this particular one has lots of references and what do they call it? Footnotes and all kinds of references for you to look things up and understand what he was talking about and the context in which he was writing it in. And it's a very good read. There's lots of interesting stuff in it. It's a very anarchist work, and it comes out of the I think the 1800s. It came after Stirner. Definitely influenced by Stirner, but there's lots of sexism and racism and homophobia and cooking meatballs and stuff in there.
Okay.
All kinds of stuff. So,
All sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Speaking of which, since we've been going for a while now, I want to try to start wrapping it up. So I want your message to, first to libertarians who have been watching this and are kind of thinking that maybe there is something to this whole Satanism thing. For some reason, whoever you are, you're insane. But anyway, if they are out there.
It's fucking cringy. Like, do you really want this in your house?
Yeah, I resisted asking.
Want you anyway.
I resisted asking that question. Like, but isn't this all cringe?
Yeah. And I'm fine with this. So this is not something that I don't go to social functions, with the big pentagram on my necklace, which I do have. I do have a pentagram necklace, which I'm not wearing right now. I do have all those things, but I don't wear them and I don't brag about it. And it's definitely something that, I don't bring up on the first date with a girl. It's always like the third date. It's like, yeah, when you come over to my house, there's going to be a big, star on my wall. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I may say some things when we're doing stuff, but don't worry about it. It's just me being weird. It's not something that I go ahead and flaunt around unless, I get some like fundy religious person who's trying to annoy me with their stuff and trying to get me to convert. Then I'll just be like, whatever, hail Satan. That's enough to get them to leave me alone. But I think there's a lot of good kind of like lessons and stuff in there that I find useful, like how to deal with psychic vampires. Not actually vampires who are psychic, by the way, like people who will kind of like emotionally con you in order to get you to do things that you want them to do. And that sort of thing, like kind of like almost like self-help stuff that I find very valuable, kind of life lessons and rules to kind of follow that help me get along my way. I think all those things are valuable.
Okay.
And the music is better.
That is the thing that people, even at the start, in Twitter and in the chat, the one thing that people know going into Satanism is, well, you do get some pretty good tunes out of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Have you heard contemporary Christian music? It's just, geez.
It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Four chord notes all over the place.
All right. And, all right. So, the last thing there would be, what about you? Like, what if people have watched this stream and they want some more of JimJesus? Where do they go?
Well, everything I do is available on my website, JimJesus.com. It links to everything. I do a podcast called The Lulberts, which
is more Libertarian Infighting, as I understand.
Yes, a lot of Libertarian Infighting. If you're really interested in Libertarian Infighting, I was the OG. Come at me.
Yeah. Basically, I stole his concept here, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'll see you in objectivist court, and I'm going to be pushing for the death penalty. And you can check me out on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com, whatever, MACHW1. If you just look for JimJesus as one word, you'll find me. Just look for the screaming cat in 90s. You'll see it. And yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We're going to kill the stream here, assuming that I can figure out how to do so. So I'll see you all next time, where I've got a couple of ideas out there. Hopefully we'll be hooked up with an agorist soon. We also want to try to get someone defending the opposite of this, like the connection between Christianity and libertarianism, and maybe ranting at me about how I did not push back hard enough against Jim here. So that would be fun. If anyone has any recommendations, let me know, and I will see you all later. Bye.
Yep. Hail Satan.